2008 global financial crisis. Pretty big deal. There's a ton of projections, percentages, and measurements of energy use in this article. So instead of boring you with all the details, the main point of this article that I'm trying to get across is that the lockdown is reducing the amount of energy needed and driving a major shift towards low carbon sources of electricity, which includes wind, solar, hydropower, and nuclear clean energy. And you'll get a kick out of this. Clean renewable energy has overtaken coal for the first time ever in 2019. Low carbon sources are set to extend their lead this year to reach 40% of the global electricity. And there's been a report from the energy research group Bloomberg, if you're familiar with that name, that says that wind and solar power are now the cheapest sources of new energy development for 2/3 of the world's population. There's just a bunch of big deals in this story. After 10 years, so it's been 10 years of uninterrupted growth for the natural gas demand. And right now it's on track to decline 5% in 2020, which is kind of terrible for that world, I guess. This would be the largest recorded year-to-year drop in consumption since natural gas demand developed at scale during the second half of the 20th century, which means we might be able to get the heck out of the Middle East and stop going to war for natural resources. I mean, it's no secret that our economy is tanking, along with many others, and a lot of that has to do with the dramatic drop in consumption of natural gas. Now, while the economy is tanking may not be good news, the clear and obvious path to move forward is renewable clean energy. It's cheaper, it's less harmful to our environment, and I mean, it's the obvious future. While this pandemic is terrible, it is showing the world all these areas that we need to focus on and develop, while also protecting our future and the very likely chance that something like this happens again, because pandemics always happen. They're not something that you can predict. So we need to be prepared. Overall pollution is down and greenhouse gas emissions are at a rapid decline. And I'm, for one, I'm all about it. So I really like, I love positive climate news. So emissions are down, the skies are cleaner, and it's showing all the flaws in our current system that we need to patch up and fix and move away from the old timey, disgusting pollutants. So that's a good news story. So now let's get to our PPDPT segment. And I came across this story on Instagram, and I decided to do a little bit of digging after I seen this. And it's called justgiving.com. And it's a global online social platform for giving, pretty much. They accept donations, and the money goes towards feeding a life. They are currently on the ground in Iraq and Syria, helping refugees from all over the Middle East. Almost all of the people that they're helping have been displaced by war and currently living in dire conditions. With the donations that they're receiving, they're delivering vital life-saving aid such as food, clean water, widow and orphan sponsorships, schooling, and much more. They're very, the videos that I watched, they're very heartbreaking videos on a page called Spotlight Humanity. I'll share the link in the show notes. And the videos just show that they're feeding these families and children that are stricken by these war-stricken areas. And as I said many times before, a lot of the problems going on in the world often fall to the wayside simply because if it doesn't affect us directly, we don't really pay much attention to it. As sad as it is to see these videos and hear about these stories, we really need to pay attention to them because the harm is still being caused out in the world, and we need to do our part and end these useless wars for resources that are becoming obsolete. Though those in power are making the decisions to go to war, and they aren't the ones that are going to war. They're not on the front lines. They're not the ones making the ultimate sacrifice. They're just looking out for their best interests and trying to line their pockets full of money. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, I understand, but we need to do better, and that's why I wanted to highlight this organization. Money causes all sorts of problems, but it also makes the world go round and can bring some serious aid to those who really need it. We just need to be more diligent and be more in control of how it gets spent. So shout out to justgiving.com and all those people helping aid the refugees and others who need it the most. Now that we're closing out today's episode, let's go over some of the gems that I hope you walked away with. Daddy Longlegs, They're not spiders. They're arachnids, but they're not spiders. And they have penises. Some serious information you need to hold on to. But in all seriousness, $1 million donation that was solely for the employees of a hospital to get some extra cash for their hard work is a definite highlight. Following a small restaurant-oriented culture in Lithuania that was able to adapt and still serve people, along with a special thank you to the health workers by giving them some vouchers for food and drinks, showing that they really care for those and they're taking care of the people who take care of us. And to the modern world for being reminded that the actual planet is burning harsh pollutants and it's not the only way to harness energy, and that the obvious future we need is to start leaning towards renewable energy, renewable clean energy, and we need to hit that harder sooner than later. And finally, that website that helps others give and are doing their part in helping some of the people who really need it, who really need the attention the most. All these things are equally important in their own right, and there are a lot of things that need to be highlighted and spoken about to bring about a positive change and movement that we need in the future, if not now. I hope you got something out of this podcast and maybe have a little bit of better outlook on what's going on in life right now. But before I go, I just want to share one more good news story. It's actually an image that was sent to me through my friends at Audiograph. It's a letter from a farmer that was addressed to Governor Cuomo in New York. It was pretty heartwarming, and I figured since it was shared with me, I'd share it with you. And here it goes. It reads, I quote, "Dear Mr. Cuomo, I seriously doubt that you'll ever read this letter, as I know you are busy beyond belief with the disaster that has befallen our country. We currently, as of March 26, 2020, are a nation in crisis. Of that, there is no doubt. Your approach has been spot on correct. I commend you for that, and especially for telling the truth, something that has been sorely lacking as of late. I am a retired farmer, hunkered down in Kansas with my wife, who has but one lung and occasional problems with her remaining lung. She also has diabetes. We are in our 70s now, and frankly, I am afraid for her. Enclosed, find a solitary N95 mask left over from my farming days. It has never been used. If you could, would you please give this mask to a nurse or doctor in your city? I have kept 4 masks for my immediate family. Please keep on doing what you're doing so well, which is to lead. Sincerely, Dennis and Sherry, I think is the last name. I may have messed up that last name because the letter was written. It was a written letter, and the writing isn't the clearest, so I hope I came across pretty clear. The point is, regardless of how you feel about politics or the pandemic, what we're going through right now it's pretty serious, and the fact that we have to continue to say that over and over again bewilders me. People are dying just because it may not be happening to you or anyone you immediately know doesn't mean it's not happening. There's 7 billion people on the planet, and just because you don't see it in your life doesn't make it any less real. The world doesn't revolve around you, you know what I mean? So this farmer understands that and was willing to give something as small as a single N95 mask to a health worker. That just says a lot more about this pandemic than the morons out there protesting for businesses to open back up. So thank you, Ira, for sharing that image, and the people at Audiograph. It's things like this that give me the hopeful feeling for humanity. You know, a lonely old farmer took the time out of his day to write and send this letter out because he wanted to help someone in a city that has been overrun with this virus in any way he could. So I commend this man and thank you. So yeah, that brings us to the end of our show. It was packed full of inspiring good news, and I, for one, am always glad that I'm able to provide something that I think is essential to our mental health, as well as our attitudes for how we go about our day. Doing this podcast gives me something to look forward to every week, as well as gives me a sense of accomplishment when I send it out. And I truly hope it does the same for you when you listen and change, and maybe changes your point of view to a positive one, if it's not. And if there's anything you'd like to share, whether it be a good news story, an image like Iris shared, information, or maybe just some feedback, you can contact us on any social media platform we have via Facebook and Instagram at Limelight Highlight, or you can tweet to us at LLHighlight, or just send us an email at limelighthehighlight@gmail.com. I always try to get back to everyone who messages me, so thank you in advance. And also, if you'd like to support the show, go share this, subscribe, leave a rating and a review. That's another way of telling us what you think about the podcast, and it'll help go spread the podcast and get it more on people's radar. So go do that for me, and I will be great, and I will greatly appreciate it. And that ends this episode. So as always, be humble, be helpful, pay it forward, and be the best you. Stay safe, and I'll talk to y'all next week. Peace.